Chapter 15. A Trip with Tinker. Whitenose arched her back and was ready to meet the attack. But the big dog paid no attention to her. He sprang directly toward the kittens. "Go away! Stop!" Pete cried. Just then there was a blur of yellow fur which seemed to fly over the ground toward them. "It's Zip!" Holly exclaimed. "Zip has come to rescue our kittens." Before the black dog could harm the kittens, Zip was upon him. Over and over they rolled in the grass, growling and snarling. "Stop, Zip! Stop fighting!" Pam cried, as she and Pete gathered up Whitenose's babies in their arms. "We have them." The fight did not last long. Zip was too much for the black dog, who put his tail between his legs and streaked off. Zip trotted up to the children and licked their hands. Joey Brill, in the meantime, had disappeared. "I still think he was the one who put the cats on the raft," Pam declared. The children had come to Sunfish Cove by walking along the pebbly shore. Now, as they returned home, they decided to go back by way of the road. It was a little longer, but easier walking than over the rough stones. Several people stopped the Hollisters to admire the kittens. One nice woman, named Mrs. Elkin, asked them if they would show the cats to her daughter, Joan. Pam said they would be glad to, and followed her along the walk which led to her house. A little girl about Sue's age was playing in a sandbox. Seeing the kittens, she ran up to look at them. "Aren't they cute? May I keep one?" Joan asked. Pam explained that the kittens belonged to them, but if Whitenose had any more babies, the little girl surely could have one. Mrs. Elkin went into the house and soon returned with a plate full of sugar cookies. The Hollister children each took one and thanked her politely. Joan invited them to look at her other toys in the backyard. As they walked around the corner of the house, Pete saw a sprinkler whirling about on the lawn. It was just like a gadget his father had made for the children, a combination lawn sprinkler and kitty spray. It had been in a small van. "Where did you get this?" Pete asked Mrs. Elkin excitedly. "Isn't it nice?" she said. "Joan has so much fun with it. We can sprinkle the lawn and sprinkle her too." The woman told Pete that she had purchased the sprinkler several days before from a man who brought it to her door. "I don't like to say this," Pete told her, "but I think this belongs to us." "Really?" Mrs. Elkin asked. "I don't see how that could be." Pete told her of the theft and how they were trying to find the strange man with the little red hat. His name might be Bo Stenkel. "The man who sold me this sprinkler didn't have a red hat," the woman said, "and he didn't give his name." Pete was disappointed, but he also asked how the man had brought the sprinkler. It was too heavy to be carried far. "He brought it in a boat," Mrs. Elkin said. "I saw him rowing across the lake. He stopped right in front of our place and carried the sprinkler up to the house." This suddenly gave Pete an idea. The man had come by boat. Did he own it? Did he live nearby? Pete said he would tell his father about the sprinkler. He could look at it and see if it was his. "That's fair enough," Mrs. Elkin said, "and I hope you find the man with the red hat." When the children arrived home, they found their father already eating his lunch. They told him about the new clue they'd found. "Good work," he praised them. "So the intruder's name may be Bo Stenkel," he said. "I'll see if I can find out anything about him." Immediately after he and Pete finished eating, they drove the station wagon to the Elkin home. The woman and her husband were very cordial. Mr. Hollister examined the sprinkler and identified it as his, saying he had made it himself. "This teaches me a lesson about buying from strangers," Mrs. Elkin said. "I paid that man a good price for it." "We'll have to stand the loss," her husband said. Mr. Hollister said they might keep it. Since their little girl liked it, he believed he would make more of the sprinklers to sell at the trading post. "I'm very grateful to you," Mrs. Elkin said. She smiled. "I'll stop at your store very soon to buy some hardware and toys." On the way home, Pete said he had an idea. Would his father allow Tinker to accompany him and Pam to Blackberry Island? If the thief had rowed across the lake, it was possible he was staying on the island. "Remember the picture of our house Pam found there?" he reminded his father. "And the warm embers in the fire?" "That's right." At first his father did not want to give permission, thinking it might be a dangerous adventure. But when Pete assured him that they would be very careful, Mr. Hollister gave his consent. He drove immediately to the trading post. It had been a quiet day, so he could spare Tinker. The old man grinned broadly at the prospect of catching the intruder, and went to the Hollister home with Pete to pick up Pam. She was thrilled about the adventure, since she liked playing detective as well as her brother. "I hope we catch the thief today," Pam said as they went to bail some water from the bottom of their rowboat. Pam offered to do this, while Pete and Tinker walked to the garage to get the outboard motor. "We'd better fill the tank," Pete said, as he helped to lift the motor from a special rack he had built for it. The boy poured gasoline and oil into a gallon jug and mixed them thoroughly. He carried the fuel to the boat, then went back to help Tinker carry the motor. By the time they'd fastened it in place, Pam had the bottom of the boat thoroughly dry. Pete unscrewed the gas cap and poured in the fuel. "I think we're all set now," he said, wiping his hands on a cloth. Mrs. Hollister, who had been watching them from the house, walked onto the dock as Pete, Pam, and Tinker prepared to shove off. "Good luck this time," she said. "Be careful not to separate in your search. That prowler might be a very bad man." "Yes, Mother," the children said, and Tinker assured her he would take care of them. When the three had taken their places in the boat, Mrs. Hollister shoved it away from the dock. Pete started the motor and away they putt-putted across the lake. When they were about halfway to the island, Pete looked back toward his own dock. He could faintly see his mother waving a white handkerchief. Suddenly he spied something else. Another motorboat seemed to be following them. Pete turned his course to the left. The other boat did likewise. Then the boy steered to the right. The boat still kept after them. "I wonder if that fellow in the boat is trying to play games," Pete remarked. "Who is he?" his sister said. "Can you make him out, Tinker?" Pete asked. Tinker looked hard, but said all he could see was a man bending over in the boat. "I think he's doing that so we can't see his face," Pete said, becoming suspicious. The boy wondered what to do. He had read airplane stories, which told about one plane being pursued by another. It was smart to turn the tables and chase the pursuer. "That's just what I'll do," Pete told himself. Warning Tinker and Pam to hold on tight, he swerved the boat about and headed for the man who was following them. The other fellow was quick too. He changed his course and headed toward the northern tip of Blackberry Island. "I can't catch him," Pete said as he fell behind. "We have too much weight in this boat." By the time the Hollister boat neared the shore, the other craft was out of sight around a bend in the shoreline. Pete was careful to avoid any rocks at this time. He carefully steered the boat to the shore. They all hopped out. "I don't know where to begin searching this island," Tinker said. "It's a big one and has a lot of trees and bushes." "I think we'd better search the shoreline first," Pete said. "But let's stay close together." Before they started, however, Pete had Tinker help him pull the boat far up on the beach. Then the three of them started walking along the shore. After a few minutes, Pete cried out, "I see footprints!" Tinker and Pam ran to his side. there was a circle of prints, evidently made by a man. Where did they lead to? Tinker asked. Over there, Pete answered. The children followed the footprints. They ended at an old log lying back from the shore. Pam walked around the log and suddenly gave a little cry. My doll! My French doll! She exclaimed. The excited girl reached down and picked up the pretty doll with its satin and lace dress, one of her collection of foreign dolls. She had left it in her desk, which had been placed in the little van. How did it get here, Pete? She said, then looked around nervously. Unless Bo Stenkel is here. I think he must live on this island, Pete answered. Come on, let's find him. That may not be so easy to do, said Tinker. There are a good many hiding places here. Can you see any more footprints? Pam asked. Tinker and Pete bent down. The boy could see nothing, but after the old man looked intently around at the ground a few seconds, he said, Yes, I can see that somebody walked from here into the bushes. The three pushed their way into the dense shrubbery. Soon the footprints disappeared entirely. The fellow couldn't have vanished into thin air, Tinker remarked, puzzled. Pam bent down to examine the ground around her. Pete and Tinker continued their search, walking farther and farther from the girl. Do you see anything, Tinker? Pete called. Nothing at all. How about you, Pam? There was no answer. Pete looked about for her. She was not in sight. Pam! Pam, where are you? In a moment came the reply. Here I am in these bushes. Come over and see what I found. Pete followed Pam's shout and found her bent close to the ground. Here's a real deep footprint, she said, pointing, and it matches the others. There were no more nearby. The fellow must have jumped, the boy reasoned. You're right, said Tinker, who had hurried up to join them. Maybe he landed on that log. Up ahead was part of an old tree trunk lying on the edge of a gully, which was filled with trickling water. They examined the log carefully and found a scuff mark. He probably jumped into this stream, Pam said, and walked along it. Now we'll never find his footprints. He's clever, whoever he is, Tinker said, scratching his head. He and the children were about to return to the shore when a bright-colored object attracted Pam's attention. Something red was snagged on a blackberry bush. She hurried up to see what it was. The little round hat we've been looking for, Pam exclaimed.